Hi.
Ilona Thompson here, PalateXposure. I'm here in American Canyon at Loch and Union Distillery. If that backdrop didn't give it away. This is really a beautiful setting, and there's a pan story that I'm going to ask about in a minute. I already know it, but I think I'm so looking forward to hearing it again because you can't help but notice this lovely prop.
Yeah, I know. Right.
I'm here with my three favorite people.
That's an honor.
Gian. Yes, no, this is Gian and this is Colin, distiller, master distiller. We'll call him MS.
Yeah, sure, I guess.
MS of all things distilled. And this is Mr. P, as we decided. That's James, and he was walking by, and no, actually, he's the producer of the show, and he's here to keep us all honest because these two guys might recognize your own product, but I know James.
We sure hope so.
Not likely. So this was originally a double blind tasting and then a blind tasting, and it still is, by the way, even though you clearly can see the bottles and there's 7 of them. We got quite ambitious, and I am very excited to taste them with these guys because they actually work. They're distillers. They actually work with gin every single day. And this is some of the brands that were selected for this particular purposes. The bottles are numbered on the bottom, so they don't know what's in each glass, 1 through 7.
No idea.
No clue. And so I'm the only one, because I poured, full disclosure, I know exactly what's in each glass, but the rest of them are going to have to really work at it. And we're going to get to watch.
Well, and also,
hear their
full
comments.
full disclosure for me, these are gins that I have drunk in the past, but I have not drunk in a long time. And that's a reason why I chose them.
That's right.
Because I want to revisit them, because I've just been drinking a lot of my own product lately.
So you're getting the inside story, like
Yes.
true inside story, but also you're getting, there's trepidation here, just so you guys know, because their gin is in one of those glasses, and they don't know which one. So we're going to get to test them. So this should be fun. I cannot wait to stick my nose in the first glass. I'm just going to ask you to dive right in, and let's do number 1, and then please shout out any comments that leap to mind. So why are you doing this?
I don't know, I kind of learned that back in like the whiskey days too. You just kind of trap all the aromas.
Yes.
And then basically just kind of like release them a little bit, and it just kind of comes out all at once for me, because sometimes with such high alcohol, you're going to kind of get your nose a little, I don't know, a little tapped out by the end of 7. So sometimes it's just nice to take quick little whiffs and, not stick your whole nose in there, and kind of keep your palate fresh a little bit.
So you're getting dollops of wisdom already. I would encourage you guys, whatever spirit you're into, a wine, beverage of your choice, blind tastings are the best. And you can totally do this at home. You can do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can do 12, whatever you feel like. But there's certain technicalities that really help, and one of them is definitely palate and aromatic fatigue. Those of us that judged professionally, like the 3 of us have, it's a real problem. So even in a smaller setting, in a compact situation, when you just have a few things in front of you, you can certainly get by the end of it, and you want to stay sharp. It's not just even a matter of fairness, which is what we worry about as judges, but it's really a matter of, hey, I just really want to get the most value out of it. So what you just described is pretty cool. So you basically kind of moderate it is what you're doing, right?
Exactly, and keeping it all consistent too. I'll do that to every single one of these, and that way you taste the same, you do everything the same, and the only thing that's going to be different is the gin, not you. I think that's part of judging that's really hard for people is if you want to keep it fair, you have to be fair yourself. And I find that a lot with people. They'll drink a wine and they'll just by the 6th one they're just trying to get over it because they've kind of just shot themselves mentally with their palate. So I kind of I'll take my time, and I'm not going to talk a lot. It's all up here, and then when I get asked, it'll all be written down, ready to go.
See, that's a really good way to do it. Those are actually really salient points, even for people in the trade that are watching, because we all struggle with the same things, and by the end of a session, you're pretty wiped, psychologically and palatably.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I imagine even after 7,
my
palate's gonna be pretty wiped.
Yeah, but The good news is that this is also stimulating, so I'm like feeling a lot of adrenaline right now. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like unreasonably excited.
Well, and it's fun for me to be able to be with people that claim to be experts in this. And we talk about what do we smell, what are we getting off there? Because I think to some consumers, gin is this kind of ambiguous. They're all the same, and right away, no, these are not the same.
Absolutely not. I think that's something that I really like about gin as a category, is there is such a broad range of what it can be, all the way from really light, clean, subtle, all the way to like the triple IPAs of gin. Those exist as well, and everything in between. And the same way with the best and the worst in every category. The really bad gin is terrible, and something that a comment that we get a lot when we're out at trade shows or whatever is people that had a terrible experience with gin in college or something. I can't tell you how many times we have that almost exact comment, and they don't want to touch gin anymore because they were drinking whatever cheap gin in college.
Yeah.
This could be 20 years ago. And then we taste them on what we have, and it's like, oh wow, this is a completely different experience than what I had before. Thank you for turning me on to gin again.
It's a lot. I think that all lends itself to the craft scene, how craft brewing did that to the brewery industry 20, 30 years ago. Everyone was drinking, the big names, Anheuser-Busch's brands, Coors, Miller. And then all of a sudden here comes the craft guy saying, you don't have to drink lagers all the time, and you can start drinking these IPAs and pale ales and getting into these really cool realms of things, and that they're well made. And I think the quality started shining, and gin's starting to kind of capture that as well. Everyone drank the big boys back in the day. Tanqueray, Bombay, or probably Gordon's are the big ones that I can think of. And so when we get presented gin, it's very much like, oh, I had a bad experience with gin because this. Well, we're taking a little bit more care to what we're doing. There's a lot more thought into what we're doing. And now that we're making gin, people can become more approached and saying, okay, like this might be a different gin, but I know it's going to be well made. It's not bottom of the barrel or just of the mass quantity.
Yeah, mass produced.
So I'll let you guys taste and smell and such like that. I'll talk about the scoring sheet for a minute. For those of you at home, this is very similar to a wine sheet, meaning that the categorization of spirits and wine happen to be similar. So those of you that drink wine and not really taste that many spirits, don't be intimidated in any way as far as really kind of breaking it down in your head. We look at appearance, and that is because if it's a white spirit, you want it to be pure white. You don't want anything cloudy and things of that nature, so that does in fact reflect here. Then of course the aromatics, much like in wine. Body or texture, however you prefer to refer to that. And then taste, of course. That's arguably something that people pay the most attention, but to me it's always a toss-up. Aromatics to me is a big deal. So finish, just like in wine, spirits should have a lengthy, or I should say spirit that's made with integrity and intent should have a lengthy finish. And then we put something, or actually I should own up to this, I put something else on the sheet, which I call the X factor. And what it means to me is that there's something special that really stood out. There's something so compelling about that particular spirit that stood out in ways that perhaps don't even need to be exactly identified verbally and nailed down, but there's something special about it. So we allocated a bit of room for that. And we will add the scores at the end of it. And let you guys know where heads were at, if something stood out and for what reason. Our aim here, we really want to identify things that have properties that are worth noting. Something that, is really particularly well made or particularly pleasing. I mean, at the end of the day, this whole exercise is because we want to drink something pleasurable.
Yeah.
There's hedonic qualities that matter. It's really not the number.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Something you were talking about, like with wine, that always interests me is that with wine, there's always a very subjective note to this. It's always about what our brain is telling us that the wine smells like, right? The fruit flavors, the earths, organics, inorganics, the finishes, the acids. It's all fermented grape juice at the end of the day, and how people get the cranberries and stuff, right? When I was a sommelier, it was the same thing, and you had to blindly guess what it was going to be, or what region, what varietal, what year, what was it about this wine that placed it where it's from.
Yeah.
Unlike wine, we are the creators, we are the mother nature here, we get to make the recipe. So something that I really like about gin is that it's not all very fantasy anymore. It's very much like, oh, if I smell this flavor, and I'm not going to say anything for the power of suggestion, but if I smell something, most of the time it was in the actual recipe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So obviously there's going to be junipers, corianders, the basis of gins, but what makes cucumber different than another green kind of vegetable?
Yes.
What is
Or-
going to be?
Yes.
What kind of pepper are you smelling? Really dial in on your palate and
Or
see
the
what's
way
going
it's
on.
distilled as well.
Very true.
Vapor distilled versus not vapor distilled,
Yeah.
macerated, plate distilled or not. Those kind of things can completely transform a gin as well, besides what the actual ingredients themselves are.
I was thinking, I have been thinking actually for quite a few years about the concept of terroir. And I recently had a revelation courtesy of Graham McDonald, which is another podcast that we recorded that I'm really excited about. He actually said something that completely rearranged my mind, which is the concept of terroir is home. And I cannot get it out of my head.
Yeah.
So terroir is not transportable physically when it comes to wine. It literally is the dirt.
Yeah.
But when it comes to what it means, I think there's that portability, if you will,
So
mentally.
with gin, you're talking about we kind of create our own terroir.
That's exactly what I was
That is-
getting at.
That is that's a really interesting concept. I mean,
Yeah.
and I know for us at least, a lot of effort went into what we created here, not just creating the stills that we build them on, but Jesse developing the recipe and then scaling it up. There was a lot that went into this and some intangibles too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's that intent. There's that intellectual property that you both had infused it with, because I know how much you agonized, over, what it's going to wind up being. I mean, it was a process.
Oh, it was a huge process. And well, because building this distillery was such a long process, it took us about 3 years from like the initial concept all the way through to
Yeah.
final construction. We took about a year and a half to develop the gin recipe. It didn't have to be that long, but because we had that much time, we took that much time. And we got 2 lab scale setups, and we started with this massive list of botanicals, basically everything that the FDA said you could use and not hurt people, or legally use, that smelled like something. And obviously there was a bunch of those that we clearly didn't want to use. We threw those out, and then narrowed the list down, did single distillate trials on all of them, narrowed the list down, and then worked with a company called TC Bauer out of Chicago. And their main wheelhouse is high-end perfuming and sourcing for high-end perfuming. They do a little bit of food, but mostly it's perfuming, like think Chanel, things like that. And we said, for everything on this list, send us like the best 3 to 5 examples you can find, regardless of cost, except for juniper, which we got like everything they could send us. And then, we just started with, we did single distillate trials again. And then we started with juniper, the one that we thought was the best. And then just layered from there. And by the end of it, I guess we probably ended up doing about 500 distillations, test distillations before the final product. And then scaling up was another thing entirely, because going from 2 liters to 3,200 liters, it's not linear with what you have to add.
I bet.
Yeah, and so TC Bauer helped us out again, put everything into this huge spreadsheet. I still don't understand it. And first distillation, we just nailed it right on the head, and we didn't change a damn thing.
But could we really honestly make an argument that terroir in fact has this portability or mobility, in the sense that it doesn't have to be anchored into physical dirt, that it actually could be created?
I think the word here is expression.
Yeah.
Winemakers use that a lot, which I like.
Yeah.
Is that we get juniper from the Baltics, we get corianders from XYZ, those all relate to the home of them.
Yeah.
But how do I put those together? How does the team come together and create an expression of what we think gin is? I think it's almost like the other way around, which I really like, because blending is so interesting to me, where some things really play well together, some things enhance the other. They're like human relationships. And so when you have them, kind of construct each other in a gin, that's where I feel like someone could call that a terroir, but I think for me the best word to say is this is our expression of what our interpretation of gin should be.
So it's really human terroir.
It really is, because think
I like
about
that concept.
if I was to go to Burgundy and talk to a negociant, a guy that never made wine but buys wine, blends it, and sells it.
Yeah.
Do you give him the same credibility as the farmer, the winemaker? This, sure, because maybe he has to go through all these, like we did, 500 different test batches, and go, well, this is my expression of wine, and that has to be a lot to be commended for.
Yeah. Same thing happens with whiskey and blending as well.
100%.
I mean, that's going to be a big part of your job coming up.
Exactly. So I have to look at these barrels like they're all cohesively working together to make our expression as our distillery's expression of single malt whiskey. And I think that's really important as well. So I think the more people kind of look at gins as what I call like optimistically,
Yeah.
as long as the gin is made well and it's made with intention and expression, I think that's where I really start appreciating gin. Is I don't even care that my gin is here in the list. What I care about is that these are all well made. These were all someone's idea and expression. So I want to respect that distiller's idea by going for citrus or going for whatever peppers they were using, roots, coriander is their selection, right? We went through the same thing. There's a handshake agreement to say I respect you that way.
Yeah.
And we're able to really kind
That's
of...
a very good point.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, somebody came with their final product and was like, wow, this is awesome. I want to put this out on the market.
This is me. This is
Yes,
me as Loch and
yes.
Union. So that's something that if you can respect people to say that, like I can respect you, then that's where I think I love the industry, is the confidence that you can have by putting yourself on the spotlight. As introverted people are in our industry,
Yeah.
I can still look at them and say, I know you worked hard at this. It is good. Thank you for doing this.
That is so cool. And I'll talk about it for a second while you guys keep tasting. First of all, you brought up blending, and that is such a big deal. So those of you that love and buy a lot of Napa Valley wine, I'm not sure if you know this, but Insignia was the first Cabernet blend, and at the time, Phelps was nearly laughed out of town because it was all straight Cab from Napa Valley. That's
Interesting. When was this?
That's how it was. Look it up. I'm not going to name a date because I don't want to be wrong, but it was, the first Insignia showed up in the 70s, so it has to be in that
That
time
era.
frame. So it really wasn't that long ago if you think about it.
No.
We're young wine industry, post-prohibition,
True.
counting from Mondavi
Well,
days.
for some people in
But-
this room, 70s might sound like a long, long time ago.
It does in a
Thank
way.
you
but,
for keeping us honest. We're
yeah,
all old, aren't
but
we?
compared to
Well,
old world
half the
wine.
table is.
So what happened is that he kind of set a precedent, as odd as it sounds. They've been blending in the old world in Bordeaux, forever really. Meaning, what's the traditional Bordeaux blend, right? And in Napa, it was unheard of prior to that. But it became so successful, and now it's a given. There's not that many 100% Cabernets in Napa Valley anymore.
Yeah.
So the art of blending is a big deal. And, like I said, it's now widely accepted in the wine world, but it is really the cornerstone for gin.
Yeah.
Without blending different flavors, you will have very monochromatic, very boring
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
offering. So, and it's that signature style of the distiller, that human intent that we talked about, that really defines it. And what's so cool about it is that even in the wine world, we've become so darn trendy. So many people follow trends. It's a trend to follow trends. And it's unfortunate because what you talked about is really owning your own point of view. And I
100%.
always find it really important. So, and that is again circling to the blind tasting is why it's so fun, you guys, is because you get to find out a point of view side by side. There's no way to replicate that without having several expressions in your glass, because that way you get to know a little bit of the point of view
Yeah.
and how it lands on you, most importantly. So it comes right back to who you are and what you like.
Yeah.
And we all respect what's in front of us. There's a reason for why it exists. I'm glad people do what they do because they should do what means something to them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're just repeating somebody else's steps. They're not really investing in it.
Yeah.
So we're not judging on that criteria. We really judging is inherently subjective. Anybody that tells you otherwise,
Is lying to
they're full of
themselves.
it.
Yeah.
So don't ever believe that that's how it works. I mean, we're human. We have bias.
Yeah.
But what's important is that you get to find out for yourself what point of view makes sense to you? Who do you want to have a conversation with? Which one of these bottles would you want to invite to your cocktail table?
Yeah.
I know which one. Sorry, I won't do that again.
No, it's quite all right. You should. If you didn't,
Yeah.
I'd be worried.
Exactly.
It's the whole point. Like I said, you own who you are. You're self-aware as a human, but also as a professional, right? And that's what's so attractive, actually. When you're talking to somebody in real life, in relationships, and they're wishy-washy, it's going to be hard to build something with that person.
Yeah.
But if they're really confident and secure in who they are, you'll either like him or you won't like him. But if you like him, you know exactly who they are.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Very, very true.
The life wisdom here. But it is. I mean, to me, there's so much in wine and spirit world that imitates life.
Yeah.
Very much so.
And that's why it's so darn addictive. We can't get out of it,
Yeah.
right? Nobody ever departs.
Well, absolutely not.
Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah, I mean, I got out of being an accountant to get into beer, and I couldn't imagine myself being in any other kind of industry. It's just that's from the moment I got into it, that's what I was doing. It's evolved a little bit over
Yeah.
time, certainly. I didn't know then that I was going to end up building a distillery, but certainly there's something about it that is very, very attractive.
So I read an article about, I won't mention, but there's an article written, well-written piece, but there was something missing in it. And that's how you got into this industry. And that relates so well to our conversation. We talked early on about getting down to like really intimate levels, so here
Yeah.
it is. You got so unhappy.
Oh, yeah.
You got so unhappy.
Like really, really unhappy. I mean, I was working as an accountant in Orange County and truly hated my job. I mean, I was working long hours, really long hours certain times of the year with something that I had absolutely no intellectual interest in. And I think the reason why I ended up staying with accounting as long as I did, I have a master's degree in accounting for whatever reason.
That's going deep.
That's going deep, yes. Is because I didn't have the kind of emotional maturity to go out on a limb and do something that I actually liked for a living, which seems so intuitive is what you should do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt trapped. Literally, the feeling of claustrophobia was what it felt like. And at the same time, I was getting very obsessively into homebrewing. And I was like, wow, I'm doing this, I'm getting good at it, and it's making me happy.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and it just came to me. I was just like, why am I coming home like on the weekends and looking forward to doing this, and then hating my job on Monday morning?
You spend the majority of your life hating what you do, and you
And I also
allow yourself a chunk of it.
Yeah,
to
and I also
fulfill.
found that I was thinking about it
Yeah.
when I was at work.
Yeah, like obsessively.
Yeah, and obsessively, and that's
great.
kind of what I do. Like when I get into something, I'm very obsessive about it, for better or worse.
I think you have to be maniacal if you're really going to get somewhere.
Yeah,
Same.
exactly. There's a very fine line between, genius and crazy.
Well, yes, the mad scientists. I mean, look at every genius historically. None of them were normal.
No, not at all. And I think the worst thing that could happen to me is to be normal.
That's well put.
And at the end of the day, I was living a
Double life?
extremely normal life. For the most part. And yeah, so anyways, it came to a head, quit my job, moved to London, and ended up working at a brewery there.
Yeah.
And the guy who opened that brewery, Duncan Sandbrook, also used to work for the same accounting firm that I did in London, but quit his job and opened a brewery.
That's so cool.
Exactly. So worked there for a while, needed a visa to stay there long term, went to Harriet Watt, got a master's degree in brewing and distilling, fell in love with distilling and Scotch whiskey. Rest is history, basically.
As I sit down with some really wonderful folks, I've been very fortunate to interview some people with just massive amount of life experience and that achieved so much, and also people that are building their brands. And that comes up so much, Colin. It seems like, it's just coincidental. But those serendipitous connections, if
Yeah.
you guys don't believe in them, I've heard so much, and I'm pretty skeptical. It's true. People
Yeah.
come into your world, into your life, things reveal themselves once you become open to something. So
Yeah.
if you're not passionate about what you do, I'm not telling you to quit your job, but what I'm saying is that life is too short.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I know a lot of my friends, that are mildly unhappy with what they do, but they stay with it either because of security reasons or they have families
Yeah.
or whatever. And that'd be hard to
Well, I
be in a
think-
job, even if you didn't seriously hate it, but not doing something that you were passionate about.
Well, I remember hearing you say that before
With your
about the
life.
fact that the problem of being only moderately
Yeah.
disappointed or moderately displeased is like, oh well, does anybody really deserve to be happy? I'm not unhappy,
Yeah.
and so when you're just not unhappy, you just kind of keep moving along until you realize, I really hate what I'm doing.
I was miserable enough to do something about it. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. Like, it wasn't like I had a ton of courage or anything. I was unhappy enough
Just knew
that
you
I
couldn't keep doing this.
Exactly, that I need to take the safety net out from under my life and do something completely different.
I think it's so darn relatable. And I think we all have instinctually, a sense of what we love. Whether we give ourselves permission to pursue it, that's a different story. But we all have it. So if you really kind of get quiet with yourself, and this is a great facilitator, by the way, not the
Yeah.
alcohol part, but the part that this is kind of meditative in the sense that, if you're really examining something and you smell and you taste, and it's like, it is kind of a conversation. So I find it to be very useful for those purposes, but you might just find a way to who you truly are.
Hmm.
And that's probably what I value the most.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been this kind of circuitous path to getting to what I, really was supposed to be doing and what makes me happy.
Well, and in fairness, some things you just can't know. Like
Yeah.
we think of it, when you're 15 years old, the student that stands up in high school class like, I want to make alcohol. Well, you're going to mock him and call his parents in for a conference because things aren't going well.
Exactly.
So there's not really a way. I mean, unless you grow up in a vineyard, in Burgundy, then it makes perfect. I'm going to make wine.
That's a really good point.
You grew up with accountants, right?
Yeah, I did. And a
I'm
risk manager.
Yeah, I'm going to count some things. I'm going to do
Close
something
enough,
on paper,
right?
and yeah.
I don't think there's few things riskier, maybe restaurant business, than wine and spirits business. I think that's right at the top of that
I
chain.
think there comes a lot of sacrifice though,
Yeah.
because like what I love about our industry is that there's a lot of culture here.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of, it's not a career like if you're in this profession, then that's just what you claim as your profession. But this is who I am, as you're saying. You're lending a lot of your personal touch to this. Did I ever think I was going to work in a distillery? No way. But here we are. We have a cool, really welcoming industry that has created this kind of platform to really just express yourself. If you were to take all the bottles away, all this, it's just you in a glass.
Yeah.
And you get to put that on every shelf in every bartender's hand and say, listen, this is my sacrifice.
Yeah.
I could be possibly making a ton more money doing this, or
Yeah.
I could be doing a lot more in this section of my life, but I'm doing this. So this is our culture that we've created. And I like that. It never feels like work that way. I work my ass off, but
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
it's not about other gigs where it's like very much like I'm in the union and I work 9 to 5 and I get paid my money and I just live for the weekend.
Yeah.
I live for the next opportunity I get to have, and whether it's doing this interview or going now to see how our gin is doing around the state and having a lot of fun doing that, all the while making sure it's all done well here.
This connection is so important in the wine context. Clearly, people think of hospitality, how good it feels to share a bottle of wine, but this is really no different in that sense.
No.
When people have a bottle of your gin in their bar and they're sharing it, or they're just ordering a martini done in their favorite style, there's that relational aspect when, even though you're not there, you kind of are.
Yeah.
Because you take so much pride in what you do. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, when I first started in the spirits, on my journey, as they say on reality TV, I mean, I didn't think of it that way, but it became immediately apparent that it's not just a cocktail. Because if you have several cocktails in front of you made with the same exact type of spirit but different interpretations of it, like I recently have, I did my own little mini tasting, they couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
Even in that simple context.
Yeah.
Yes, I ordered 3 martini, I admit it.
Yeah.
But they were so, it was such a fun,
Well, yeah.
an imbiber. I did consume them in the end, but it was very, very instructive. And
Yeah.
it kind of gave me this very poignant, reference to cocktails as something that's also, it's a craft spirit.
Oh,
that's
it's
part of it. It makes
yeah,
it so
I mean,
different.
this, what you use in your cocktail. I mean, mixology is an art.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the most talented people I know in this industry are mixologists. I think about Anthony at Michael Mina.
God, they're talented chefs.
And there are some amazing guys out there. We talked before about there's some folks that are true mixologists, true craft creators.
True.
And then there's others who just don't measure. Well, and just not measuring doesn't make you a creator.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, just like
I don't
anything,
measure.
there's such a big difference between the top and bottom of any industry. The people who are the best are really, really good. I think with mixologists, I'd compare them to chefs a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And actually, some of the best mixologists I know have a culinary background.
Really?
Emma has a culinary background.
Emma has a culinary background, or they went to a school that was, once again, the entire premise of the whole reason they're there is to go to culinary school. You're around ingredients all day. You're around, even if you're in the hospitality department, I couldn't not assume you're walking by people chopping onions and making stews and sauces and plates. It's, once again, you've found the school of thought. To then, if you're a bartender, you're not going to look at it old fashioned the same way as, maybe someone that just is doing it part-time to get through college.
Yeah.
They've been kind of bit by the bug, and you get to talk to a lot of these great bartenders and say, great, either here's my gin, play with it, and then there is their expression. I know I keep coming back to it, but then
No, it's a good word.
Such a fun respect to show them, to say, I would have never thought you would have put Earl Grey tea or something, or a really X factor ingredient, and go,
Nice.
you know what, I kind of like that, and I'm really interested now that we're taking your spin and my spin together, and that's the cool thing about mixology
That
for
is
me.
so cool.
Crazy cocktail you had just recently.
Oh, someone at
Caesar
it was
salad
Josh at
cocktail.
Morimoto. I hope he listens to this, but he made a Caesar salad in a glass. He infused a gin. It wasn't ours yet, but it will be soon. And he took all the ingredients of the Caesar salad and put it into a glass, anchovy included.
Like a martini, or
No, it was like in a glass, or it was up. I think it wasn't martini, but all of a sudden I'm drinking this, and it was like, you know what? I'm not mad. This is the coolest thing ever, because all the aromatics lent it to a Caesar salad. The body wasn't crazy. It wasn't like I was just drinking a kale smoothie or something. This was a legitimate. If I were to close my eyes and just put a plate of Caesar salad in my face and smell that and take this glass, it was just on the dot. So well thought of. It wasn't just something he probably threw in. He probably had, and he was telling me that he had to find the right juicer.
Yeah.
To juice all the ingredients, because the ones that weren't working, so he had to find the right juicer. So people are going to the next level, and that's what I love about people, is that if they're really caring about what they do, the bare minimum is never enough.
Yeah.
It's always about doing it right.
Yeah, when you find passionate people, you know.
Yep.
It's obvious, and it doesn't matter what industry they're in. It could be outside of our industry, but you can tell when you find people who really truly love what they do, and it's awesome.
Very much so.
Well, two things. First of all, who else at the table has a sudden urge to run out to Morimoto?
Yeah,
I won't
right.
leave quite yet, but it could be happening
Yeah.
later on. But second, and you guys have an active role to play here. I hope you write to us and let us know what you want to see and hear. But how cool would it be to have some alchemists, otherwise known as mixologists, making the craziest concoction with your gin?
It's fun.
And we know some people who would jump at the opportunity for
Oh
that.
my god, would they?
All right, next show alert. I want to.
We'll make it
that.
happen.
I want to taste the Caesar set.
Oh,
The
the
glass?
Caesar salad. Yeah, that's exactly right. Because here's the other part too with bartending that I've always kind of found is it's a very untrusting relationship at first. You walk in, they have a presumption of you, you have a presumption of them. It happens
Right.
more often than not, right?
Yeah, I haven't thought about it.
Oh,
that
here's
way, but-
another customer who's going to do this and that, right?
Yeah.
They've been scarred, I've been scarred. So here we go, and we sit down. The typical sit down, how are you? What can I get for you? Any food for you? Whatever. It's always the same thing everywhere you go.
Yeah.
But here comes the next step. This is really the jumping point between, are you going to be my person tonight? You know? And for me, before I was into distilling, my one thing would be make me an old fashioned. Right? I'm knowledgeable enough for a classic cocktail that I know what I want.
Yeah.
So I'm not spending 20 minutes of your time deciding if I want this or I want that or what's your... No. I want this. Make this for me. Once they make it, then is your judgment to say, do I trust you enough to make any drink that I can come up with?
Bartender's
Good.
choice.
So that's
Bartender's
your test.
choice.
That's your
So
test.
mine was the old fashioned, but now, I'm going to accounts, making sure that, hey, how's our gin doing? How are you doing? What can I do for you? My next thing now is like the last word.
The last word.
That is an easy cocktail to make, right? I don't make it at home because I don't carry that many ingredients, but I go to the bartender and I say, you know what? Make me the last word. Or if they, and then, okay, you don't know what that one is? Okay, great. Make me a gimlet. Something that's easy to make, but easy to mess up. Because the
Yes.
ratios are so important between the sweet and the savory and the pucker and
Acid.
the gin.
Yeah.
Everything is so mixed in, right? So then it becomes this is good.
Gosh.
Now we can party tonight.
I'm just thinking about like the difference between the best and worst gimlet I've ever had.
Exactly. Yeah.
The best gimlet I've ever had is an amazing cocktail and super simple when it comes down to it. But the worst is like something you get at some dive bar,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's just
sweet and sour sauce,
and it's
and
just
gin,
awful,
Yeah.
And it's and that's the thing is like a good mixologist can take something simple like that, make sure they're using the right ingredients, balance it well. I mean, because you're talking about the difference between sweet and acid and everything else that goes into balance. For me, acid balance is huge in
100%.
cocktails, huge.
And if they mess it up, guess what we're doing? Gin and tonics, rest of the night. You
Yeah.
can't mess that one up. You know what I mean?
Tonic.
It's harder to mess.
It's harder to mess up, but then it just becomes this very blatant, fine, now you were my bartender, this is what we're doing tonight. But if you meet someone that's special, that knows how to drop the maraschino cherry or the Luxardo cherry into the last word, and he's using a spoon to dip in real nice, all right, now I'm going to be ordering some really nice cocktails tonight because we're going to enjoy this experience.
Details.
Exactly.
So for the consumer out there, honestly, if you value liver enough, don't compromise it for no reason. Give it something to work with. Like,
Yeah.
have a pleasurable experience.
Exactly.
It's worth the trouble to identify people that's going to do it right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you will know, even if you don't think you would, you do. Even if you not consider yourself sophisticated drinker and not into craft cocktails, if you like your gin and tonic or martinis, believe me, there's a lot of difference between a well-made drink, even if it has 2 or 3 ingredients in it, and not. So it's worth the effort to find those places. And honestly, these days, drinks are not inexpensive. So you invest in your health and your money into something. So please, find out.
Exactly.
Do the homework. It's a good
Yeah.
thing. I'm encouraging you to get off your butt and not just default in your closest corner bar, but make sure that you find people that honor their craft, that are really cognizant about what they do, and you'll be so much better for it. It's a better experience.
Go find those places and develop a relationship with a good bartender
Yeah.
or bartenders. I mean,
Exactly.
Believe me, it's worth it.
Yes. No, it's an important part of life. I mean, bartender like hairdresser, they know your whole life story. You might as well invest in something that, also tastes good while you're having a chat with them. I mean, that's, it's a relationship whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
No, it's so important, like to me, what you eat and drink. Even when you're just in the kitchen cooking, I don't know what's in your glass. I don't know if it's wine or a martini.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're gonna make a martini, darn it, don't cook with bad wine and don't put bad spirits in your glass.
No.
No, don't do that. 'Cause,
Yeah.
you're the one consuming it. You should be happy.
Exactly.
This is about being happy. This is about quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
think
what it comes down
this is
to.
really happening a lot. I mean, I'm looking at it in wine in the Napa Valley. We're looking at it in the industry. Is really the bang for your buck mentality.
Yeah.
Of what can I get for the best quality for the cheapest amount of money.
That's right.
And there's no real particular thinking about investment, right? If I want a nice pair of shoes, I'm going to spend a couple extra bucks because it's better made. It's going to last longer, right? So I think about it as my bottle of gin.
Yeah.
It's a good price, but for the same price, you can probably buy 2 bottles of something worse.
Yeah.
Of course.
But the one bottle is going to go a longer way. You're going to be more impressed. You're going to be more enthusiastic about what you're drinking. But yeah, I don't want to buy 3 belts a year because they keep breaking. So I'm going to spend 3 times the amount to possibly get a better belt. And it just blows my mind that when you talk to people about that, where I'm so sucked into our culture that how could you not want to spend maybe a couple extra bucks on something nice, and you're supporting actual people, not someone's fifth kid tuition or something like that. We're up and coming. Most of us are.
Yeah,
I can tell you probably more than half of what we're tasting today is probably coming from a smaller distillery with the same guy like Colin, who, or woman that just wanted to go live out their dreams. And so if that costs an extra $10 to enjoy myself and put money into someone's pocket as a craftsman, you got my vote for sure.
It is such a good point. This whole QPR, I think, is sometimes a misnomer because people associate value with the price, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Value is in fact value, and we all have a budget, well, most of us. So you at that point have to make a choice, have to make a pact with yourself. Do you want to, let's say you have $100 to spend, do you buy $5 $20 bottles of something,
or $10 bottles?
Exactly, or the worst yet. Or do you buy 2 or 3 bottles of something that actually is pleasurable?
It's acknowledging that I don't have to do either extreme. I don't have to get the $4.99 Costco special, nor do I have to buy the $150 bottle. That I can pick something in the middle that fits both my wallet and my taste with a little bit of effort.
I get this all the time. It just always comes up. This is my fun little story, right? And I've even heard guys like Alton Brown talk about it, that if you really know, and there's so many people that don't know. And I mean, or they're very responsible in one part, but they don't want to do it for the other. My perfect example is every time I walk into Trader Joe's, right? Like I'm going to be there later today, got to go pick up stuff for a party. Okay, so this is what I do. I go and you see everyone reading the back label, and where did this head of kale come from? And oh man, was this made by pygmy children? I want to support the fair trade. Okay, like hey, this is what you do. You get the whole grocery store packed up in your basket, and then you turn the corner and you go to the wine aisle. And I see everyone squatting. I mean, it's like they're doing a little dance, and they're looking at the bottom shelf stuff to see, like, what it is. And then it's like, okay, you're going to buy these premium ingredients, and then I see you pick up the $5.99 bottle of wine that probably was just made by every robot.
You don't want to know what goes into that $5.
I made wine. I know what this happens, and I just almost give up. Alton Brown even talks like I just walk out of the store. I'm so disappointed. And it blows my mind that that's what happens in the industry, like the alcohol industry. Is I wouldn't say there's a lot of ignorance. There's just a lot of lack of knowledge of what we do behind the scenes. And so I think if I would have shown like the PETA, if we were the PETA of the alcohol industry and shown like these awful videos of everything getting squished and fermented and all that gross stuff, and then you show like a distillery that's clean and people are making spirited say wine, people like, oh, you know what, I trust that. Now I can buy a bottle with confidence that it is well made with integrity, I guess you can say.
No kittens are being harmed in the making. I just want to establish that.
Well, drink water and
And
stay hydrated.
Part of us wanted to film here in this building was, at least for Alona and I when we were scouting people and places, this term craft distilling comes up, and you have this picture of a still in somebody's garage. That was, you saw it in the Beverly Hillbillies or something, and then we come in here, and this is not what you'd imagine.
Well, exactly. I think with, a big hurdle we have to get over all the time is when we say that I don't even use the word craft anymore because I don't think it has a ton of meaning, but, we're opening a distillery or a craft distillery, they think we're doing something in our garage, that is still this big, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you have something that's the scale of this and the amount that you can actually push out of a facility like this, is craft tied to size, or should it be, excellence in how you're making the spirit, or an attitude about spirit, or making it with your hands, or whatever.
Well, I think that's it.
I mean,
we just saw that there's a major wine player that make millions of cases a year, that now they're releasing a beer, and the article says now they're entering the craft beer making. Like, I don't think so. If you're making millions of cases, this is not craft. This is production. And again, nothing is wrong. But let's use the right terminology.
Image is everything. I mean, look at the bottles of spirits that we have in front of us. In wine, you put it in a bottle, you slap a label. The only thing that has going to be competitive is the label. Everyone has a very uniform way of having a bottle, right? But with spirits, I mean, look at it. There's so many different types of bottles here that it's just has to capture the eye, you know, every single time. And that's telling me, you know, like, okay, like, why are you trying to do this? You're trying to be more crafty. You know, the more interest you have in the bottle, maybe, you know, the guy hand blowing every bottle and listening to some really cool music doing it. That's not the case, you know. And I think there's just a lot of like, you know, well, there's someone behind the curtain here that's making it work, and the wizard exactly. And so I tell people, is like, yeah, you're going to be capturing your eye, but what's more important, it's in the bottle.
That's wizard pants, by the way.
Wizard pants.
Just so we know, this is wizard pants, right?
Exactly. The wizard gloves. And, we can't really zoom in right now, but
the wizard is a nudist, so he leaves his pants behind. But what you touched upon, I think, is really, really important, and it's marketing. So, yes, kale. I read recently it absorbs more pesticides than any other vegetable.
Doesn't
so
surprise me.
people that love kale, beware.
Yeah.
The onus at the end of the day is on you. I'm sorry, we cannot take that homework off your plate. It's just how it is. You need to educate yourself. Don't just listen to the marketing hype, or even, I mean, all those labels are pretty and they all have a reason. But you got to find out what's inside. You actually have to learn for yourself what is it that you're purchasing. And if you want to feel good by looking at the label, the marketing people, that's what they get paid for, is to make you feel good. But it doesn't mean that's the truth. It just means it's framing of what their version of the truth is.
Yeah, and Gian mentions integrity a lot. You know, there are so many brands in this industry, and I won't name any, that, you know, aren't even produced at a distillery that's theirs. It's sourced out somewhere else. And I think that, you know, I draw the comparison to craft beer a lot early on, where if you were going to go early on in craft beer, if you're going to go pick up a beer off the shelf, 9 times out of 10 or more than that, it was actually produced at that distillery. But particularly with things like whiskey, more often than not, you're buying a whiskey from one of 3 or 4 distilleries in this country.
Exactly.
And all it is a contrived story, and, you know, the companies are just branding firms, frankly.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really disappointing to kind of like, I don't know, like working in wine, it was very much like, I want to see how the wine is made, go to the tasting room, go to the production facility. And most of the time with, you know, more boutique wines, you're going to walk in, you're going to see the same setup of a crush pad with your crusher destemmers, your pressings, your barrel house, everything, and everything comes into play. And that way, to me, it gives like the customer a very good like relationship with that winery, saying like, I've been there, I can taste it, I can feel it, I get their presence. And of course, you know, tasting room's going to look nice, and their music's going to be really nice, and they're going to have things for you to purchase. That's a business. We understand that part. But I think what's interesting is, like, I wish people, you know, that were interested in things, I know that's how I do it. If I'm interested in X, I'm going to go visit the X part that I'm interested about. If I'm interested in how barrels influence, you know, whiskey, well, I want to go visit a cooperage because I've never seen a barrel being made. And just these little you know, bits of information can really enhance how you feel about what you're interested in and who you are, you know. And so that's kind of what's going on, is then you're saying like, oh, I really love this whiskey, or I really love this product. Well, why? You know, you claim to be so responsible with so many things in your life, but the one thing that you are consuming, you are not being responsible with. So you're interested in that craft distillery, you know, you want to go see X distillery, and they live close by. I mean, breweries do a great job of that. Go to Lagunitas. It's some of the best experiences I've had, because you go in, you go to the tour, and they walk you through the facility. They don't shove you into a room and tell you a story and put a video on for you. You are there. You're seeing fermenters. You're seeing the kettles. You're seeing, they even show you the hops. Everything is there. So when you're drinking the beer now, I am such a bigger fan of Lagunitas, because as a consumer, I can trust that it's coming from there.
Yeah.
That needs to happen more.
Well, and I think talk about education a lot is getting people to realize that that's actually the case.
Yeah.
And there was an experience I had recently, and again, I won't say where or who, but, you know, somebody pulled up a whiskey off the shelf and was like, you know, here, check out this cool whiskey with this story and all that. I know where that whiskey was made, and it wasn't made at that distillery.
Is your lip bitten to the point of
Oh
bleeding
yeah,
at
and
this
it's just
point?
like,
Gotta
oh
say
man, this is just a perfect example
You
of,
got a great
Yeah.
story, but
of a massive problem, I think, in this industry with, I guess, the soul of the industry, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
And there's no way to regulate it, so you have to
Yeah.
actually get out
Yeah.
and find out for yourself.
well, I think the onus is on us.
Yeah.
The onus is on the consumer also to
Yeah.
figure it out. But a big challenge for us is to educate people about what we actually do here and why this is special and why
Yeah.
other people that do things like this,
And-
even though they don't do it the same way, why that's special.
Something just to add really quick to that, like we were talking about brewing and wineries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is, you know, like I was saying with wineries, like you want to scale up your winery, just buy the bigger part of that piece of equipment.
Yeah.
You want to start a bigger brewery, then just buy a bigger system.
Yep.
And things just kind of like on the wine and beer side that I've seen with my own eyes is that they just keep kind of scaling up, and next thing you know, you're a Firestone Walker, or you're a Lagunitas, or you're a, you know, one winery in Napa Valley, and next thing you know, you're Mondavi. You know, these guys didn't start huge; they had to get there somehow.
Yeah.
But with distilling, it's so much more difficult to really scale in that sense because these stills work very customized to how they do it. If we were to have, you know, a still smaller but the same design, it would not taste the same.
Wow,
You know, you would have a
fascinating.
different thing. So these, what I call like copper sculptures that are functioning.
Sculptures.
Because
Steampunk shrine.
yeah, the steampunk shrine. But that's kind of what I love about it. Is like, you know, I come into work and it's like cool, like, oh, but what if we had like twice the size of the stills? Because I obviously on the production side want to do things so much more efficiently and faster and better and bigger, you know. And then it's like, well, now I have to understand that, you know, if I'm making a dish for 4 people, let's say we're making dinner here, and then I have dinner for 300 people. That's what I'm talking about. Is it, you know, the catering aspect? It's the same thing. So we got set up like this and said we're very comfortable here, but we are very cognizant that if we go bigger, you know, what are we going to do? Just buy maybe another exact set of these stills? You know, are we going to go bigger and see how the flavor is going to go? We'll see, but it's different in our industry that way.
That's
yeah.
really interesting.
Well, and think about if you took the tack of sourcing product in and selling it. You know, if we were putting all the money into marketing that we put into this,
Yeah.
how much further along would we be in terms of cases moving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the hope is that in this industry, it actually matters that we do it right, and that long term, that's going to put us ahead.
Transparency, man.
And
Yeah.
being transparent about it.
Yeah.
I think we learned a lot about your branding philosophy right there, and you know, this seems.
We get worked up. I mean, honestly, yeah.
No, this seems very. Go ahead. Sorry.
And you talk about, like, you know, terroir or the sense of home. That, to your point, once you started to create what Loch and Union is and what this feels like and tastes like, you can't just double and hope it tastes like that. You've still got to continue to be Loch and Union.
Oh yeah.
We are Loch and Union. I think that's something else that you see with us is that we're not afraid of being on the spotlight. We're not afraid of being out there and saying, like, this is us. This is our, once again, it's who we are. You know, we could be doing so many different things, but here we are. And that's something that I think kind of misses the knock is I want to be there. I want to be representing our brand. No one tells a better story than yourself, right? Like if I was going to talk about you, I could only say certain things about you. I don't know your life story. I wasn't there for every minute of your life, but we are. So why not?
And I think your willingness to be so transparent and candid is instructive in and out of itself.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I mean, we put a lot of effort into it so we could be transparent.
Yeah.
You know, if we didn't have this, we couldn't show it. You know,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
we do.
Yeah. No, and I mean, at the end of the day, just to play the devil's advocate, you know, when it comes to the wine world, you're never going to know everything about the brand.
No.
I mean, it's just not going to happen. Even if you go to an nth degree, you're not going to be standing there looking over their shoulder, you know, post-harvest, you know, watching them, you know, how they ferment and such like that, what they add, what they subtract. I mean, it's never going to happen. And I don't think it's necessary. I think that if you know enough,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first step. This is your introduction. This is your dance. You pick the girl that you're attracted to the most. And then once you realize you're attracted to somebody, then you get to know them. And then you put some time and effort in, and you'll be rewarded if you get to know them. And the fact that you're so willing, not just to go to the dance, but to go on and build that relationship with the consumer. That's what's so cool about it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. And, I just want everybody to know that we exist and that we're doing things the way that we are, because we're still really new. And the biggest challenge, I say it all the time, I want everybody to know that we are here, one, and then get them to know what we actually do.
Yeah.
I want to go out in Napa and have every single person have heard our name. And then from there,
yeah. This is our home. I say that every single time I get to be in front of anybody. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
If it's the bartender in Napa, if it's my grandma, if it's anybody, it's Napa is our home, and we take care of our people. And I think being here in the pioneering spirit that we have in Napa Valley, and always making everything to the highest standards with a progressive value of things can be better at all times, then we want people to showcase that. I want people to be proud of us. There's very well-known winemakers in the valley that we know just because of our integrity. And something that I always come across with good and bad people in my life is that there's a difference between arrogance and confidence. I could say all day how amazing we are and, we're better than this person and that person, but it's not, because I'm willing to put my bottle on the line and say, now it's your turn to judge me. And I think that's the part of the confidence that I'm really into.
Yeah, I'm proud of this.
Exactly, and I'm proud of Napa, and I love living here, and I love being a Napan now, and I'm trying to do something for the valley, not just us. It's something that we're always joking about in the office, like how could the judgment of Paris be re-incentivized with spirits and put Napa Valley on the map again, but in another category, Who knows?
Scotch whiskey?
Scotch whiskey,
single malt
or
whiskey.
Single malt, or could it be gin? I hopefully will be going
In
to
the UK,
UK like this Christmas break, and I want to go and learn more, and I want to immerse myself in their culture of gin making there, and say, okay, I'm confident because I know how to make gin, and the American dry gin is a category that I would really like to build, but I have that respect, and I'd love to put our gins comparably to people and say, yeah, these guys are good.
And I was going to jump in and say, part of what this whole conversation was about what gin is and could be. And recently we were talking to someone made spirits, and they just confessed that they don't really know anything about the spirit that their company's producing now. They've got a great name, and it made sense to expand into that market, but
They just
privately
said
they
that?
said, I don't really know anything about that spirit.
Wow.
They said, but it was a good idea for my company. Okay. Well, I think the fun thing for now is that the folks watching are going to get to watch you two and us tasting through. What do we taste in these gins? What are we experiencing? Say, okay, they have a great product, but they really know the product.
Yeah.
They know what they're making. They didn't just say, hey, I think gin could be a place to make some money.
No, I think for you
Yeah.
two, the first, and those of you that have been watching, hopefully you're still with us. It becomes very, very apparent that you're obsessed with it, and that's the way it should be.
So I think I'm gonna push us to Mr. P, the producer, to say let's get back to this and say, what are you guys getting out of these?
Yes, we're going to dive right in.
We got 1 through 7. We're gonna dive right in. but really, so for me, I guess the most amateur of us, there's a wide variety I'm getting here.
Yeah. I
mean,
mean,
there's a couple that have some similarities, but like when I get 1 compared to 2, it's like, wow.
Very much so.
Oh, yeah, tomahawk. Of a gin. Yeah. It's a word
Good tasting note.
I use a lot. Yeah. It's intensity, big difference across the board. There are some similarities. Obviously, all these have juniper in them, and you can get that in all of them. But something that's like super citrus forward or super juniper forward. There's a lot there, obviously.
So any favorites emerged for anybody that just, hey, I really want to drink that one?
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I do that sometimes when I'm out at bars too. Like, I know I can drink Loch and Union every day of my life, but when I go to a bar, there's great selections, and there's stuff that I haven't tried before, and I want to try them. And so, my standard drink or like the gin and tonic or something, and to me, it's the wow factor. There's some gins out there that it's almost like they engineered them so much to not be present in a cocktail that they just disappear, and then
Yes.
next thing you know, you've had 4 of them and you're stumbling out the door. And then I've had a couple, and I'll actually name this right now because I was actually really proud of this, was the St. George Terroir Gin.
Okay.
I've had it before when we were, kind of R&Ding and doing this and that, but I never really had it in a cocktail or anything like that. And like I said, my wow factor was just like, wow, I like this. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't think, because it is a job when you're smelling. You're trying to dissect a lot of things and discern and things like that. But I just had it and I said, wow, that's good. Like, that's all it has to be. It's interesting, but it is good. So kind of like the Robert Mondavi characteristic, it doesn't matter what it is. If it just tastes good, it is good, So what I'm getting out of these is that they are all very good. And they're such different, once again, expressions. Like, I can imagine being the creator here in their minds and going, oh yeah, you know what, I really like the citrusy aspect of gins, so you know what, I want our gin to be a little more on the citrus side. I like mine to be a little bit more on the root, earthy side. Okay, I'm getting a couple notes out of that one. And so you're kind of like getting in the minds of people right now. You're kind of like getting into their personalities, like winemakers the same way. Like, I've met super rambunctious winemakers that make the meanest cabs I've ever made in my life, and just like you smell them, you're like, God, this is you, and like female winemakers are beautiful because, I've met some that just make the most gorgeous like Pinot Noirs. They're so elegant and so sexy, just like them. And it's such a cool way to get inside their personality that way. So I think this is what I'm getting with a lot of these gins. Very, very artistically, but also very just, I have nothing to frame a reference here besides what's in front of me.
What a beautiful description. And I'm so tempted to ask you guys this question. If you were to describe each glass in one word, because I really latched onto that tomahawk. If you only had one word to use, so what would be number one? Let's start with you.
Hard to come off the top. Okay, well.
Put him in the spot just like that. I'm sure it's entirely unfair, but I didn't say I was going to be fair.
But I think people want to know that. Like, just you talk about that wow factor, and we said the X factor. That's something that just jumped out to you, and so that's going to put you on the spot there. What's that one thing that hits you?
Yeah, well, exactly. You're going to be next, so start thinking about it. What's number one?
Got to smell it first.
And so the hard thing for me is I don't want to use the first word that jumps out. I mean, I'm just going to admit to you that the first word that jumped out is for me it's not positive, and so this is more of a chemical. That's just what jumps out to me.
Legitimate.
A chemical kind of smell to it. That when some of these got juniper, the citrus one, like you said, slapped me upside the face. And this one was just like, this is chemical.
It's very assertively chemical. Okay, so chemical. What say you, Colin?
Spicy.
Spicy. How about you?
Rose water.
Wow, look at the range, you guys.
See, I think somehow we're having a different number one because I smell the chemical. You smell some rose water.
I promise you it's the same one. But see, what's interesting about it is that it landed totally differently in all three of you, completely. I mean, I was getting more of a floral, so I'm with you. But that's really kind of meaningless in the sense
apparently
that
I don't know what a flower is.
we're gonna take you to a flower shop and stick some roses in your face. But spicy, that's also a pretty big departure. I mean, floral is what? Feminine, elegant. Spicy is assertive.
It is, yeah.
So we have 4 notas over here. And
it's so funny because to me, I'm just smelling this again because that's, power of suggestion, obviously. But I don't get as much of like rose water. Necessarily.
That's because you don't have a palate, so
that's probably true.
Makes sense.
So there's something wrong.
Go to
with
the store and
too.
get one and come back.
There's a sense that to the left of the table there's more of an accurate tasting. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. My left.
Well, one of us is a nose of bloodhound. Another one is completely extraordinary in every single way. No, seriously, I've heard about your prowess, so it's not really fair.
To me, this is very summary. I'm just going to be completely just. This is what I get. This is a gin that is engineered towards the simple-minded. It has notes that sing, but you don't need a symphony, right? Wine does the same way. You can have a really good cab if it sings 3 notes, right? And it's still good. It's not, I wouldn't call it complex, but you know what? I'll drink it. This gin is the same way. If I had this in a gin and tonic or a martini, I think maybe that's something else that we should be talking about is when we go through these is what cocktail we would like it the most in.
application.
I think that would be a really fun thing to say, like, oh, you know what, like, because it's, well, to the right side of the table, you know, floral, summery, elegant, feminine, you know, would it be better in a, you know, an X cocktail? And you guys are thinking it's chemically, it's spicy, you know, what kind of cocktail do you guys want to see it in?
So
you know?
he says chemically. I say spicy, not necessarily in a bad way. Like, I don't hate this. I actually rather liked it.
Yeah.
But
Would you drink it by itself?
Well, all gin's better, so, you know, just,
And
probably not. No.
See, that's the moment of truth, though, to me, that you wouldn't sip it.
No,
This is, in
no.
fact, a cocktail gin, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
We agree on that, right?
I'd put it in gin and tonic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And chemicals, that's a bad thing. I mean, again, a limited palate.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, but-
it's a
so,
bad
yeah.
thing. I mean, that's what I get on one of
Listen,
these
there's
other
no
ones.
such thing as
But-
bad descriptor. I truly don't believe in that.
it is engineered. I feel like it's very, like, I don't know, beer does that a lot to me.
Yeah.
With, like, IPAs, it's like, if it's so hot or it's like so
Yeah.
in your face, it's like the dentist trying to put Novocaine in your mouth, like, hey, over here, like they wiggle your lip and they inject you. Like, that's kind of how I feel with some of this stuff, that it's like
Wow.
so one-sided that it's like, well, what are you hiding on the other side? You know, what are you putting in the shadows of this?
So what would be a cocktail, to your point, that would really make this, you know, stand out?
I'm really thinking like roses are kind of putting, you know, or cucumber, that kind of thing. So I'm very much on the, you know, give me a little bit of fruit, give me a little bit of carbonation, because I would probably imagine
It's
that
like mojito. Is that where you're going?
yeah,
Oh, he would be. Yeah.
Exactly.
I agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, or even just like a Cosmo. It's something blends very. I know, right? The man is always. Why is everyone always associate
give
me
you
with
a
girly
Cosmo
drinks?
now, yeah.
I always drink the girly drinks
Where's
at the
my
bars.
umbrella?
That is
Where's
so
my umbrella?
funny. I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Just
But
priceless.
I'm. Yeah, right. It's,
What
little
say
known
you,
secret.
hostess?
Yes.
What would you put it?
No, I said mojito. I mean, I do
that's-
get
that-
cucumber and
okay.
roses. So and
A little mint,
you know,
would you get in that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's pretty. This kind of effervescent qualities,
Okay.
I think, would play well together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think if you dress it out, it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay, so number 2?
Number 2, that's right. So I've only smelled it. I haven't even tasted it.
No, see,
But-
this is now that my second pass, very cucumber. Like,
Yes,
wow,
yes.
Tomahawk,
This
man.
is totally
Dreams.
Tom.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
get a lot of citrus
Do you say
on this one.
Yeah, tomahawk. What do you mean by that?
It just beats you over the head. There's no
Ah,
subtlety.
too much.
I was like, I
Yeah.
don't smell any.
That's what I mean,
Native
like-
American history in here. If that's what you're referring to. Like very Comanche of this. gin
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, maybe, did anyone else get citrus? Because
Oh, it's 100%.
Yeah. Oh,
That's what
yeah.
really
It's
jumped out
just,
to me, just like-
so
The texture is very different in this one from the first one. It's
Very.
It's quite a bit heavier.
it's so heavy.
Yeah.
Almost over. I mean, not almost overbearing to me.
It's very viscous. It has this, you know, like I would say almost like creamy feel to it, which
Yes.
is a lot of roots
Yeah.
in gin. When you use roots, Angelica Orris, like we do, that's what you're trying to do. It doesn't smell like anything. I can pull Orris root out for you, and it smells like
Wow.
nothing. But you extract those kind of like kind of root oils and
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like it becomes very creamy. So it's kind of cool that it's like, okay, cool. Like I can see the recipe now. They're probably using a good amount of, you know, Angelica root, Orris root, something like
Wow,
that.
that's
But then the
amazing.
cucumber here is just like, I'm closing my mind. It's like, I want to go home and have a cucumber salad with this. You know, this is, give me like a gimlet with like a cucumber
Gimlet,
topper
yeah.
or something like that. You know, this is.
So
this
this
I
is
is-
suppose
where
if
it
you're
blends
going to be
a
using
gimlet
that,
cocktail.
gimlet would lend itself quite well.
Yeah.
To that.
So again, this is a cocktail. It's not a sipping gin. So far, 2 for 2. We're not.
I would not sip
We're in
that.
agreement. We would not sip on that. Okay. So number 3. See, that to me has that little medicine-y quality on the nose.
Okay.
Maybe that's what you're thinking when you said chemical.
yeah, it's fair. I mean,
It's
we-
not
we've talked
strong.
before,
It's
and-
not strong, but it does have
And I
a little bit
harken
of that
back to-
industrious.
And I go back to like when we talk about wine tasting, that the more you can do to develop your palate, the more options you have for calling something or identifying something.
100%. This is getting into the category of like
Different
gin
texture again.
Indian food kind of thing, where the corianders and cardamoms here are really
Hardcore.
prevalent. Little allspice.
Lighter body.
It is lighter body,
Yeah, which I like.
But then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, here's the complexity. All of a sudden, you smell it, and it's to me a little earthier Indian food, curry-esque, and then the body is somewhat light and
Yeah.
playful. So it
think
like wine, right? You can
Yeah.
have two different palates. You can have your nose that's playing
Yeah.
a game, and then you taste, and you're like, oh, hey, what's going on, and vice versa. That's what's
It
going
was
on here.
very nuanced. I wouldn't have identified all the individual components, but to me, level of complexity is quite a bit higher, meaningfully higher than the
Yeah.
other two. So this is something I would consider sipping.
I
would
started
be
this one.
inclined.
I was really blown away by this one. Yeah.
Oh wow, blown away. That's good. So far we like number 3 a lot. Everybody, Mr. B.
I actually like it a lot better second pass round.
Yeah.
Like tasting it again.
It's I mean, it's a whole new thing for me judging the scores and trying to to get at this. So it certainly wasn't my favorite, but as you start talking about the power of suggestions, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, just sitting there and thinking about it, and so the wow factor, that tomahawk factor, can really say whoa, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good. On the same hand, this one, like
Yeah,
it's
very
just
much
it's
so.
very dissippable. Like,
No, this is such a fun exercise. Even though I poured them, I've only, again, for purpose of disclosure, I've only had 3 of the 7. So I really am not familiar with the other 4, so it's a first for me.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of really discovering it for myself, even though it's not technically blind. It's really so fascinating that differences are monumental, and particularly with respect to texture. I know in wine and in spirits, conversely, we spend a lot of time dissecting aromatics, but texture have become such a dominating factor for me. I used to just be all about the aroma and the finish in wine, and now, like, they're in the background almost, in the
Yeah.
you know.
With gin,
What's
it's
in the front.
huge.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. And not every
Enormous.
not every gin is going to be right for every cocktail.
Yes.
That's something that I've learned too. Is that's why I wanted to bring the cocktail game in here, because it's like, okay, like we would have this, like we said, mojito or like a gimlet or something, and it's like, well, do you think that gin would be really good in a martini?
Yep.
Maybe, maybe not. And that's what I really like about discussing different gins, is that
Yes.
most of them are for special purposes. Most
Yes.
of the time, I've had great gins in a martini. I go, man, this is killer in a martini, and then I try to have it again in a gin and tonic, something a little more bitter, a little sweeter. Heck no, it absolutely has no place in a gin and tonic.
No, this is Yodaism. Yoda. No, this is very wise. And people often forget there's, of course, the practical application, the utilitarian aspect. We could, be all really clever here and get into nitty-gritty and express a lot of the detail part of this, but what do you do with it, right? So, like in wine, you look at the vintage, and certain vintages are letting themselves naturally to be drunk very early on. Other drink very well when you cellar them. And with spirits, you're not going to cellar it, but how do you actually use it in real life?
and I think it's very instructive to me, because we talked before about, so far my favorite way to have lock in union another gin is just to drink it.
That's
And
the way
so
I
I'm,
drink it.
So I'm judging them purely on, do I want to just sip this? But then to your point, like, on the other hand, what would make a good cocktail? What flavors in here jump out and say, but right now I'm in the mood for a cocktail, and then I'm not going to waste this gin that I just love sipping.
Well, at the end of the day, too, I mean, most people, vast majority of people, are not going to be sitting around sipping gin. Like, I'd love to get people to do that, but at the end of the day, they're not going to. They're going to be using it in a cocktail in some form or another.
Absolutely.
It's a huge compliment to someone to say, I can have your gin at room temperature and sip it.
That's true.
That is like, no one does that. Most of the time, gin is meant to be in cocktails. Like, if you say otherwise, you're Colin. I've never heard anybody else
So
say
I drink it.
besides
Like,
gin. It's like,
I have a bottle at home, and it's a couple times a week. It's just a special treat to have a sip.
Yeah.
Don't pour a glass of it. Don't make a cocktail.
Well, you
just have a sip
discovered
of
that
it.
organically. See, the thing is, I think it's a gateway, because when the gin is made well, then all of a sudden it's like, I kind of want it by itself.
Yeah.
But it really tells you it's made well. No
Yeah.
way are you putting stuff in your mouth without additives on this.
Well, and something that
that's the
I've
case.
really liked, we're going to talk about our gin a little bit right now, is going out to people who aren't gin enthusiasts.
tell them, Colin. Tell them what they tell us.
Oh.
This is the best part.
Well, anyway, yeah, so, I mean, it happens to us all the time. We almost want to get, like, a little bell at events or something, 'cause, like, we get that comment, like, at Fresno Home Show.
Yeah, no,
but, like, 100 times a day, like,
Yeah.
at that event.
Well, we go out. We talk to thousands of people at these home shows. The Fresno home shows are our favorite place to go. We love the people of Fresno.
Which is not where you normally think you'd want to go.
Because you don't want to. They're not gin freaks in Fresno, obviously. Like, it's not. No, if only. But we love them because what happens is it's a completely blank slate, and you go in there and you pour them room temperature gin, quarter ounce, of course, in case anyone in the county is asking.
ABC.
Yeah, or ABC. Hello.
We by the rules.
Yeah, we
Always.
abide. But then the best, and we tell them the best compliment you can give a gin distiller. This is really it. It's not that bad. That is the best compliment ever. Like, to me, when someone who, I got trash on this is high school. Oh, my grandpa used to drink that trash. Da, da, da. And then you give it to them and they go, oh, yeah, it's not that bad.
Well,
that is 5 stars.
I think
man.
it should be right here on the back of your label.
Yeah, it's not that bad. We should get that on our T-shirts now.
Seriously, I absolutely love
Loch
it.
and Union.
Yeah,
Loch and Union. It's
So
not
if you
that
see this,
bad.
guys, that's your opening line to them. Everybody that's watching,
If you do, I will
remember those two.
Oh man, I will buy your drink if I ever get.
Well,
anyone
there's your
covered.
incentive. Come on.
Hey, it's the guys at Loch and Union. They're not that bad.
we get that a lot, and then we get I'm not a gin drinker, but I like this.
That's another one. Yeah.
That's the one. That's actually the one we get the most. But it's not that bad. Is kind of the second.
Yeah.
That is so
There
funny.
hasn't been, and this is again the confidence versus arrogance thing. And I can tell you now that I've gone to so many shows and I've talked to thousands of people about our gin. There hasn't been a negative reception based on the quality of the gin because of like past interferences with the palate. Yeah, I can see why people be like I hate rum. That was my high school getting trash beverage.
Rum, tequila, vodka.
Yeah. Which mom and dad, I never drank in high school, I promise. But if I were to ever do, I would have gotten really trash on spiced rum. And now when I smell it, I'm the same person as probably that had gin in a parking lot, and it was awful. And so I can associate with that. So whenever I try to drink rum, I try to think of that person I'm trying to talk to convince them to drink gin. So I can see the leap of faith that they have to make. Once again, like the bartender mentality. Like, you don't know me, but I'm trying to convince you to drink this.
We are the Ministry of Gin.
The Ministry of Gin, yeah, exactly. And but based on the quality and people saying this is good, or having gin enthusiasts go, wow, I can't believe this is, who are you guys? I want to know more. We've never gotten a negative reception based on a recipe and the quality of the gin. And that, to me, is the biggest compliment that we've gotten in the industry.
Well, of course, it's so validating because, as it was put succinctly in a famous movie, there's so much bullshit.
All right. So on that note,
yes,
what are we
number
for
4. Thank you for keeping us on track. So number 4 is really. I'm going to let you guys talk about it, but I was quite intrigued.
I was going to say the same because I really want to get people's opinion on this one.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about this one is I felt like the nose was all right, but I didn't really like it going down as much.
Let me taste it.
The noses. I mean, if you really want to be a classic gin, good way to start is to have a subtle nose, right?
Yeah.
I don't see the bottle here, so I'll talk about like Nolets. I love Nolets because it's a gin that is so well balanced and it's subtle. It's not trying to hit you over the head, and I find that in a lot of more European gins than we do in America. But this one, I'm tasting, I'm just like, dude, where's your nose? Like, and
personality deficiency on that one. For sure.
I was trying to write and I was having a hard time, and then I tasted something that you said something that I liked was, then the finish was there, and I was like, I don't think I've ever gotten salt in a gin. It actually tasted
sea salt. I was like, am I crazy?
It was briny. It tasted like it was
salinity.
Exactly.
Absolutely. No, it's crazy. I thought that I wasn't going to admit to it. So thank you for saying it. See, I don't have the balls to actually own my own palate. Sometimes it's so weird.
And I think you can still be crazy. So let's not throw that off the table. But
I will absolutely admit that I am so invested in this. I'm like you, I'm obsessed, but on the other side, because it's not really about the flavor profile per se, but it's about personality. And some of them just have such elevated performance. So yes, I get into it, I get really excited, and in the moment, I'm just all in. And sometimes, like I said, I taste something and it's so counterintuitive that you don't even want to admit it to yourself, because it's like, yeah, are you crazy? What salt? Huh?
No,
and then you start thinking, is it Himalayan? Is it pink? It's like, oh my God, stop. That conversation in my head, you don't want to hear that.
But it's funny, when we talked about how to do this, we talked about start calling things out, and I'm glad we didn't, because as soon as you said salt and brine, I'm like,
That's all you taste.
But
Yeah.
it's a mystery, like, where you guys have a better palate. For me, it's like, what is that?
Well, imagine being in a
What
wine
is that
tasting.
It's
flavor?
also knowing how to
Yeah.
describe it too.
Yeah.
But it's like when you
that's-
gargle with salt, when they tell you that
Yeah.
and you have a sore throat. That's the sensation that I got, and I never thought in a million years I'd get that from gin.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it was intentional, and you a little, hesitant
I wonder
because
where it comes from.
I hope it wasn't
Well,
intentional.
and that's what I'm trying to think is because
going
salt
for
is
something
not
that
a good
reminds
thing
you
over
when you
still.
say
Like that's
gargling.
it's a good compound. So that's I'm trying to figure this out. Is like was a botanical, I don't know, had some salt traces in there, or
Wow.
what part of the palate? Because obviously, if you're doing gin in a very traditional way, you grain neutral spirit, 95%, very very clean stuff. Doesn't matter where it came from, it's neutral. So it's not like the actual juice was salted or salt post. If they're putting salt post production, that's the only way I'm thinking about this. Is
Wow.
how did it get so like roots add creaminess, but I've never
Yeah.
had anything that tasted salty in a gin.
that is so.
Anything salty
Bizarre.
on your palate there, Colin?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, now?
after all this power of suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like the winery tasting rooms, man. You go in there, and like I said, I've done both. I was a sommelier, I was a winemaker. I worked in tasting rooms. I did a lot of stuff in the wine industry. So now when I go in there, I'm not the best, but I'm knowledgeable enough to get by. I'm not the next person walking by, right? So, yeah, they start throwing out flavors like I used to, because I want you to taste the cherry
Yeah.
or something like this. And God, I used to get so bored sometimes. I go, oh yeah, and the mushrooms with the anchovies. Oh yeah, I get it. And like people eat it up, and it's so easy for us to get through. So that's why I was so glad we just were talking and tasting, because that way, when we do tastings in the office, everyone knows me, Mr. Business. We don't talk. No one says a word for 15 minutes. And I usually have to kick him out because you go, oh. And I'm like, shut up. No one wants to hear the oh, because they're going to be like, ooh, which one's he's on? And if he says oh, you know what I mean? Everyone's silent for X amount of time when we do barrel tastings, gin trials, brandy trials, whatever it is. When we taste, silence. I don't want anybody besides the clinking of their glasses hitting the table. And the spitting, and then when we're done, then we come back and say, okay, how is number one? How is number two? And then, there's the discussion part of it, which is great.
So is there any cocktail that you can imagine this would work for?
Caesar salad.
Caesar salad, yeah.
I'm going to go back to Josh and just wave it in his head, like, oh yeah, I found your Caesar salad.
It's a salad kind of gin. Yeah, I'm sure that's not what they were going for, but I feel like there has to be some creative craftsmanship because, I mean, I would not drink it by itself. So because of the salinity, I'm thinking savory cocktail. I definitely don't want to add anything sweet to it.
Yeah.
So
Like a martini with olives, but I mean, I wouldn't want to
dirty
drink it that
martini, is that what you're
straight,
thinking
though.
of?
You would almost have to, because there's nothing. Not to say there's nothing happening here, but it's so subtle that you might have to have a ratio of a martini, like you're saying. You
Dirty
need to
martini.
basically have the driest martini to make
Yeah.
sure that the flavor was there.
No, and I think it would work in that context, but this is definitely a very specific flavor profile.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Okay.
talk about number 5
Yeah, I'd say
because I quite like it. Anybody else?
It was
I do.
Yeah, it was. I was going through trying to pick out. Okay, when I think of gin, which one jumps out to me? Like this is gin.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not that deep of a thing to say, but
No,
that
but
was gin.
tell me what it means to you, because I think that's an interesting comment. You said this is gin. This personifies to you in some way what you
Well,
want
there's-
in a gin.
Yeah, there's
Is
that. For me,
true?
the juniper was certainly there. It just for me there's no chemical sense to it. There's no medicine. It was just the freshness of that fruit. And again, I've limited the number of gins I've drank, but it's like, okay, from what I think gin is, this is it. I should get the juniper. It should sit on my tongue. It finishes with no other characteristics that I wasn't looking for.
Was that your favorite in the lineup?
Yeah, it was again a limited bandwidth to say. But if you say let's sit down and sip a gin together, Colin, this is one I want to get.
And you would sip it.
Yeah,
Is this the only one you would sip in a group?
yeah. I mean, like number 2, I want to sip just because I'm confused. I'm just confused, so I was like, man, we'll put an
great.
orange in there. They're making fun of me again.
No, I love that
Get
because
used to it.
now that I'm thinking, like I'm looking at my notes again. That's why I write everything down when I make notes, because I have the worst memory ever. I'm like,
That's smart.
2, that's after 1. I get kind of like Barney with that. So when I saw it, I wrote berry cucumber. I think cucumber salad. So I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of with you that number 2 is a sipping gin because it just has such a big side of the aromatics that it's just like, yeah, I mean, I can, like, you do this all the time. You set something down, you walk by and smell it again, like it's a very nice nose. But to add to that, to number 5, talk about wow factor again, right? Just talk about everything that hit. It was just like, there it is. Like you just said, it's the quintessential like kind of style of a dry gin. And then most of the time though, right, we're talking like everything's aromatics and spirit, and all of a sudden the palate, you're like, man, hey,
it's very expansive. To me, it fanned out on the palate more than, I mean, by far, in a way, more than any other, because it had such beautiful texture and this unctuous kind of hedonistic quality, but it was soft. It was nuanced. It wasn't just that it was there, but there's the subtlety to the quality of the presence. It is very pleasurable in terms of aromatics and taste. But the reason I would call this a sipping gin is because of texture.
Something too, I'm smelling the end of my glass, and I used to do that in wine a lot. You used to get a lot more of the oak compounds, like, oh, was this French, American toast levels and stuff like that. And there's like this really, like, now I can really smell the roots, or like the kind of like allspice nutmeg stuff. That's just a little like earthier on the blend.
Has they changed since we've been going back and forth on wine? That happens, especially with good wines habitually. Have the flavor profile and aromatics changed any for you?
I've changed. I think
changed.
That's kind of the, like I said, I can go back to number 2 and go like, hey, I didn't think about this note. 1 was the same way when we started this. So this has been really fun to do.
Is it
another
English cucumber or Persian cucumber?
Yeah. Well, I don't eat fruits or vegetables.
Mini?
So
Mini cucumbers?
Mini cucumbers, pickles. But yeah, no, 5.
So is there,
had the wow factor, another star on my list.
So when we talk about if you're like me and saying this is the quintessential gin, what are we doing with it? I mean, Colin and I are going to sip it, but is it a gin and tonic?
Anything. Honestly, I think like when it comes to a really good gin, it's anything.
Okay.
Don't even tell me. Just tell me it is that. It works with everything. I think that's the real test of a good gin. And I've had a lot of good balance. Like that's why I like a lot of the UK gins. Yeah. Because it's so good in everything. You want to have everyone drinks like how we drink, the American palates of whiskey. The Brits drink gin like it's no one's business. So they know how to engineer gin to go into cocktails. You know what I mean? So it's just like, that's how you can tell. Like we were talking about ones. I love one with martini, but gin and tonic not so much. Or really go with a gimlet, but you know what? Put it with like a Negroni. No. That's what I think a really, really good gin should be.
Well, that's another pearl of wisdom. I hope you guys are taking notes. I wish I was. So if it's good, it's anything. You don't have to mask it, with a specific flavor profile. You don't have to prop it. You play with it.
Exactly.
Number 6, as much as I hate to move on.
Yep, there she is. The old lemon cleaner.
Yeah.
the old pledge. No, I'm not being mean about it. It's just citrus and gin. I'll just talk about that really quick while you guys are getting it. It's just, gosh, man, it's just such a talk about the real hammer or the tomahawk. I'll call it the hammer on the head. It is absolutely like you smell citrus in a gin, and it is like, whoa, all right. This is a citrusy gin,
It's so weird, like just tasting through these again. I think I went through much too quickly the first time around. Like, I'm just serious. Like, I gave a pretty good score first time around, but then the second time I come to it, it's just like hits me in the head with the citrus again. And I don't know why I didn't pick that up at the beginning.
It's rough on the palate.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what do you mean by that?
Texture again. Okay. I mean, it has bitter notes, which is something nobody really wants to taste. Nobody wants to have bitter quality on the palate.
Here's something to add to that, because as a distiller, we call that the bite.
Yes.
And that's all lending to juniper in here. And that happens a lot when you macerate the botanicals before you distill them. Yeah. So you're making a tea, and then you distill it, and that's how you get the aromatics.
Tannins, kind of, sort of.
So they kind of steep into the juice.
It's basically just boiling it in the pot versus having it
That's
having
so
it vapor infused. So you just like throw it in, and it's just boiling in the
So
pot.
once you taste the tannins, you don't want to taste the tannins ever.
Well,
Once
it
you
wouldn't be
taste
tannin coming over
Well,
necessarily.
I mean,
The bitterness.
It's
Yeah.
that kind of quality. If you were to describe it, that's the closest
Yeah.
terminology I can come.
I can agree
yeah,
with
it's
you
like
with that.
lingering with me.
Yeah.
Like coffee almost.
It's like a
Yeah.
digestif to me. It's like a Campari. It's that bitter quality to it that
Yeah.
and that's part of the thing is like it's like the bell pepper taste to Cabernet Franc
Yeah.
that is all lent to pyrazine, and that's
Exactly,
a flaw
the
in wine.
greener
To
stuff.
me, bitterness is a flaw in gin, where I don't want to cook the botanicals. That's why I love that we vapor distill because
Yep.
it's away from the heat source. It collects through that basket at a lower temperature, so when it passes over, it's a lot more subtle than it is, boiling everything. So that's why with like Argent, we were very cognizant about like how does the texture feel? Is it we wanted it to feel luxurious, very very rich, good texture,
but clean.
but clean. And that's kind of like then I taste like
Jury's
another
been clean, I
another
like
juniper
that.
bite. And I'm like, oh man, like imagine that with a tonic where bitterness is a compound there, and all of a sudden you're just like trying hard not to
I
feel poison.
still have bitterness in my mouth.
So is it-
too.
Still.
So this we know it's a digestive cocktail. That's the application. Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have this with like if you were
Negroni.
like people that drink
Yeah.
Fernet and all that really crazy crud.
Yeah.
I'm not a Fernet fan, but because it's so
We
one-sided.
must have done shots of Fernet at some point.
No, because we would not be at this table if someone offered me a Fernet shot. I would just be like,
I've
not
accepted
my-
a few of them.
I pass them out, but to me this is very much like
So you
a
need
Negroni,
something-
like a
yeah.
super bitter cocktail where it's just like I'm crazy, so I like these kind of flavor profiles.
Yeah.
I would do it with that, and then
Yeah.
I wouldn't drink it. So
Yeah.
I'd
that
watch
makes
someone
sense.
drink it.
Well, I'm glad we're in agreement. So, any other feedback, or we're in number 7?
No, I was just going to ask you a question about about production. So why would someone choose to macerate the juniper as opposed to the vapor? Is it a cost differential? Is it just
I
purely
don't know if
style?
you don't have a vapor
Philosophical
basket. I to be honest, I can't really think of a reason why I would do it.
Comes off a lot stronger as we just
It
were talking
does.
about. So if it was one of those things where, you know what, I don't really want to spend a ton of money, or maybe you don't know a lot about the botanicals, then yeah, I would macerate it because that way you're getting a lot more bang for your buck. You're extracting a lot more of the botanicals, right? With ours, it comes out almost like Earl Grey tea. I'm like, how do we recycle that? Like, how can I make?
Yeah.
Can I make a curry out of it? Can I make a tea out of it? Can I do something else with our? Because they're still fresh out of the botanical basket. But with these, it's very once used, very much.
It's cooked and it gives that kind of character off. Frankly,
so
it's like
you
imagine
go-
if you put some herbs in a pot and literally boiled it. It's not gonna the aroma that you're gonna get off that is not gonna be the same as what you get like if you just smelled it.
So it's a style and it's a choice.
It's a stylistic choice certainly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, it's an educational moment for me, if no one else.
No, it's good to know actually. Number 7.
Yeah, it was one of, again. It's not my favorite, but it was up there. I mean, I do like the nose.
First thing I wrote was juniper heavy.
And once again, I told myself this is Indian food. This is where the
Coriander,
coriander
yeah,
and
juniper
cardamoms
coriander.
are just really getting out here. But like again, it's really fierce.
Oh,
It's really just
fierce. I like that.
Yeah, it was
word.
like it just it pops out.
Exactly.
But it's not necessarily as to me at least as overbearing.
It wasn't. There's not a bitter sense to it. It's not.
and actually what
too
I
assertive.
I wouldn't say too assertive, but assertive.
Assertive.
but it's really nice in the palate. Like it's a
Yeah.
very elevated gin.
Yeah.
It's very much what gin is, but just one level above.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's actually one of the ones that I like the
Interesting.
most.
So you'd say
Okay.
maybe intense instead of assertive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, and now that I'm doing a second pass, I might actually start this one too, because now I'm kind of thinking that there's good notes. There's a little zestiness to it. There's a little, there's every little bit of it. Just like we said, just a little more intensified.
Well, and if it's a little bit intense, it's intense in a way that I think, if it's going to be used as a cocktail, would be toned down well enough in a cocktail.
Yeah.
Even if it's a little bit too assertive.
100%.
Right
oh,
here.
100%.
very
Yeah.
interesting.
This to me is like would be the best gin and tonic
Yeah.
ever. to me,
Best
this is
gin
like,
and tonic.
I might actually want to do one tonight with this because, like, holy smokes, is that?
I'll let you take the bottle home.
Oh, okay, hey, perfect. I'm happy with that.
No, this is really awesome. So we decided that the best cocktail of this tasting would be made with number 7.
Honestly,
The one that we all want to sip on, right?
I agree.
We
Yeah.
all agreed? Okay. The best sipping gin, what, number 5?
5.
Yeah.
What do we decide with number 3?
You know, now that I'm like, I've had 5 and 7, I need to go revisit 3 because those are quite 2 big pillars in
And they're
in my
two
in my panel
really
here.
different ends of the spectrum in some ways.
Exactly.
You know, there's certainly nothing one note about number 5. It's very multifaceted, and I could see the application in a cocktail and a martini. I would be a purist and just make a very simple martini.
I would say for me, it's tough to go back to 3 after 7. It
Interesting.
almost, it's like, well, what's wrong with it? It's so light, and maybe, you know, back that tomahawk feat. It's not that it wasn't a bad thing, but 7 is so intense.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in 7.
So 7 has a lot of intentional flavor, right? That's what you're describing.
Yeah, exactly. But
You know their point of view. It's unambiguous. With 3, there's some debate as to where we're going, right?
yeah, and now that I'm smelling this again, I'm very much like how feminine it got to me
Yeah.
after 7. You know, like 7, just what a bronco of a horse, and then then you go back to 3 and you're like, wow, you're not as mean as I thought you were, kind of thing. You know, you're a little prettier now.
No, it's funny, at the end of the day, like I talked about, you know, gins being overbearing, and I ended up liking one that's actually fairly intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about that?
How about that,
What a
right?
teachable moment. Like, we
Yeah.
learned so much about ourselves in a certain context.
One of the, and Gian said it first, was said, I changed.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of that going on.
What a fun exercise.
Yeah, what an evolution of palate. That's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. That's
Oh,
Yeah,
This has
it
been a
was
blast.
really fun for me going through again, and I think, you know, if we're going to be doing this again, my strategy is going to be to take a bit more time with the tasting, frankly.
Well, it's amazing that we reached so much consensus because we are, in fact, so different. And
Yeah.
you two are in production, which is a whole other level.
Yeah.
And yet, even though we may have tasted and smelled different things, in terms of the application and overall impression, I think the takeaway is remarkably similar.
100%.
And, you know, I know that our rock star appears to be number 5.
I
That's-
I
that's
am
most
very,
versatility.
I would be extremely embarrassed if
Oh,
that
yeah.
is not.
If that's not LNU, I don't know what is.
Exactly.
No, but there's something that brined up my mind, right? You drink one thing forever, right? And then going back to what you said that I might have said, but whatever. But you know, palates change, evolution changes, right? Like I've met
Yeah.
people when they like, and I always bring this back to wine, something
Yeah.
I know more than anything else. Is that like, imagine people getting into drinking wine was the same way with me. What do you start off with? The sweetest, the juiciest, the more relatable it is to easier palate. But then, like, you know, real wine experts, you know, most of the time that I know that have been drinking for years, what are they like? Super heavy Syrahs, funky Rhone wines, you know, Pinots.
Pickle juice like Zach.
Little pickle juice like Zach, who just drinks vinegar in a glass, basically. You know, and that's like the true thing for me is like what I've really learned here is that like you know, obviously I knowing our gin so well, but maybe I should know more about other gins and really kind of
Yeah.
get to know what that distiller was thinking when they were making the recipe.
Yeah,
'Cause
and that's-
it's very well thought out. I've had other ones, and I'm glad they're not here at this table because the other ones I'm just like, no, absolutely not. You get free bottles all the time, or you're talking to other
Yeah.
people in the industry. Hey, you know, try this bottle. I'm like, hey, I'm excited. And in the
Yeah.
moment, you want to be positive, and you take it home. And you're like, oh yeah, try again. You know,
Yeah.
very much recipe development, like we were talking about, is so important, and doing it consistently over and over again.
No, I mean, it's so, again, gratifying to hear how open you are. Keeping an open mind, regardless of your level of experience and depth of experience, is so important because you always learn something new, and that's,
Yeah.
frankly, the funnest part of it, is
Yeah.
being surprised.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
should we?
Sorry.
So on that note, should we? You know, take a break from our video
I
and
think what
kind
we'll
of tally
do,
the
yes, we'll
scores.
tabulate results, and we'll line the bottle in its numerical order, and you guys can take a look at, you know, what happened as far as who's the winners and who compelled us the most. So we'll be back. Stay tuned.
Awesome.
Here we are.
Here we are.
This has been a very exciting experience and so instructive. I mean, I learned a lot. I know what's going on my bar,
Yeah.
so it's very practical. And as we talked about earlier, we certainly have a consensus of sorts. And I'll let you guys talk about individually, but number 3, 5, and 7 had stood out the most. We'll start with number 3, which my notes say that it's got, first of all, it's a sipping gin,
Yeah.
which is in and of itself
Fairly well known in the
important.
Bay Area.
Yes. But it's quite balanced,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what we've decided. And it's something that, is accessible. You can certainly purchase it. It's made with integrity and care.
I 100% agree with that. I like the fact that coming into this, I had no idea, and I think I think everyone learned here what really happened. Before we go into anything, and we say we like gin, but I mean, this really put to the test. How much do we really like
and
gin?
what kind of gin?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what do we know about gin? So I was happy to see when I liked number 3. It was like, oh, St. George. Like, okay, cool. Like that's really cool to know that. It's really that wow factor, like I was talking about. It has so many compounds there that I'm really, really liking about their gin. So
So
Not overbearing.
there you go,
No.
St. George's. So number 5, and I wish we'd recorded Colin's reaction.
yeah, that was
These
classic.
guys had no idea, and his reactions was priceless. I mean, they didn't know it was their own. But number 5, I think, won everybody over.
Yeah, the honest truth, we did not know. And it was actually fairly nerve-wracking early on to, yes, we obviously drink this every day, but are we in a blind setting going to pick it out? And yes, we were able to do that.
Yeah, we really put it, our money where our noses are today. I think that's really the fun part of, like we were talking about, is I probably drank every one of these in individual occasions, but not at all together,
Yeah.
with nothing
Exactly.
to accompany it. And all of a sudden, you know what? I looked at Loch and I was like, you know what? Yeah, okay, that feels like home. But
Aw.
all because it all added up to Loch and Union. It wasn't because I could just smell it and have some master palate and go, oh yeah, that's definitely it. It just added up to the subtlety, the balance, the real nice mouthfeel to it, and the ability to sip it. It was easy coming, and not intrusive at all. So that's why I was like, oh yeah, that must be LNU for sure.
Well, I think
Bit of a Goldilocks factor. Nothing
Yeah.
to take away, nothing to add.
and we talked about the fact that, just so everybody knows, that these are comparable gins. We weren't comparing a $90 gin with a $16 gin.
Yeah, so now we can disclose, and I mean, you've seen the bottles while we were filming. They're all $35 to $45 price point. They're all
38 to
compatible.
45
38.
actually, yeah.
Thank you. So basically, in terms of what you're spending, they're all highly compatible, but the differences were monumental. And some of them were stylistic, but some of them were also qualitative.
And we mentioned 3 and 5, and 7 is another.
I was-
7 is
regional-
another standout, which somebody's
regional
taking
gin.
home, I understand.
Oh, that is-
they
yeah.
claimed
Well,
it
and I was-
earlier.
And I was surprised because I always talk about how much I don't like really, bombastic gins,
Yeah.
and that was a pretty, forward gin in a lot of ways, but I still ended up liking it. It was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was to me the pleasantly surprised, because
Yeah,
I
exactly.
saw the bottles and I was kind of like, and then all of a sudden someone was like, wow, I know those guys. Those guys are awesome. Like, I'm
Yeah.
glad that I was able to just like, hey, not just because I saw a bottle and go, oh, I like those guys, so therefore I'm going to like their gin. This was
Yeah.
all blind. So I was able to really hone in, and I'm like, no, tonight, like we were talking about when we were tasting them, this is like the perfect gin and tonic. Guess what I'm having tonight? It was gin and tonic, so this
Yeah.
is awesome.
Something I just noticed, and it's super obvious, those are all the local gins.
Oh,
And,
snap,
I'm serious, and I think
Yes.
it's worth pointing out.
St. George's
No,
as
it's
well.
very.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
think it's worth
Wow,
pointing
yes.
out that we didn't do that on purpose.
No, this was not scripted or planned
Wow.
in any way, and all of a sudden
Seriously?
we have
that's so
Right.
funny.
we have a story. So the story is that they're all local.
Yeah.
The story is that we have, like any good story, it has a beginning, middle, and an end. And then when we actually identified them purely organically, we had a gin that was more lighthearted, that we really wanted to sip prior to the meal.
Yeah.
We had a gin that's a meal in and out of itself. I don't need any anything with Loch and Union. I'm very happy just to spend time
That's the way
with
I
it.
drink it every day.
And then we have a digestive option.
Yeah.
Clearly, also could be drunk on its own, but really it was kind of naturally lending itself to the end, like a gin and tonic at the end of a meal. And so we have beginning, middle, and finish,
The alpha to
right?
the omega, absolutely.
Interesting.
So we didn't plan
good.
it, but we will totally take credit. I would
Yeah, we
encourage
will.
you guys to do this at home. Do this 3. I think you would be really amazed how different they are and how worthwhile each and every, their own individual way in every aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's so fun to talk about. It's so fun to bond over it. I think if you would impress the heck out of your friends, I think you could easily impress a date. And because I know if I was at somebody's home and they pulled out 3 gin and said, babe, let's do a blind tasting. Who does that? Right?
Blind tastings are stressful. I haven't done one in a long
No, they-
time.
Well,
for
but we're
sure.
working at it. I'm saying
Yeah.
that this is
Yeah.
something that could be very relaxing.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
It shows up. No, I mean, in a professional setting, it's super stressful.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're testing your own palate.
Yeah,
But you could turn it into like
so
a
much
social
fun.
affair
exactly.
and dress up the bottles. You could go to town with it.
Yeah.
I mean, we had an immense amount of fun because, we're nerds. We love breaking things down to molecular level. And you too can be one, or you could just go the other direction and just play with it.
I have one more thing to add about this. Now that you mentioned the locality part, when we were talking about how education and knowledge is so important in our industry, go visit these distilleries. If you're watching this in the Bay Area,
Yes.
you have no excuse but to, on a weekend, call these places up and ask to go visit.
Yes.
Because we have just dissected them as professionals and as enthusiasts of wine and beverage. So now we're able to really say, well, now that I've heard people talk about it, either go get the bottles and try it yourself, or call them up, go visit them, and really get the scoop on how St. George is made. We've been to St. George, we've been to Benham's, and this
Yep.
makes me so much more happy. It makes me happier to know that, like, I'm going to go back to St. George, I'm going to go back to Benham's, and go, wow, like I was just tasting blindly. I have to know more about this. So I'm able to really tell the story of these really magnificent gins. I've really
Absolutely.
been impressed today.
And ask for them at your favorite bar.
Yeah, exactly.
And even
Because
if
if they don't have
one,
it, you should convince them to get
yeah.
it.
And just hearing those names over and over and over.
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
Well, it's been a blast, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was so much fun.
And I think, and just so you guys know, that we hope to be back with you guys again next month
Yeah.
with the next spirit, and not necessarily a Loch and Union spirit, but
Exactly.
But again, bringing together this whole idea of
Yeah.
enjoying spirits that we can afford, that there's just so many, and how do we choose and how do we have fun with it?
Yes, and if you have suggestions, there'll be a link underneath the broadcast, and please let us know what your thoughts are. Argue with us, inspire us. It's a very inclusive sport, so come on board.